Alright guys, how's it going? I am the Crown Clown, and today we are doing What If Deku was Smoker Part 2. And right before we get started, as always, if you guys enjoy the content on this channel, and if you guys want to subscribe to the channel, click that red subscribe button down there. Click that notification bell to enable all notifications so you never miss an upload. Click that link down in the description so that way you guys can join the Discord. We have a good time. There's a lot of, exclusive content that will be coming to the Discord in the near future. So I hope you guys will join the Discord, and let's jump right back into it. So where we last left off, Deku, Inasa, Kami, Seiji, and Mora all qualified to be in Shiketsu High, and their homeroom teacher is none other than Yoroi. If you guys don't know who Yoroi is, I will post his picture right now. So that's it. Now then, Deku, he's walking home after that. He's got his uniform in his hand. He's, already tried it out. And his dad is there, Tsukachi, he's there, and All Might's there as well. And All Might's saying, I've seen you at the entrance exam. You did great. You adapted to your opponent. You started using your quirk in more creative positions. However, I did see a big weakness from you. And Deku's like, what? What's my weakness? And All Might tells him, your weakness is you generally keep your body in all one space. It's like you're scared to use your power more effectively. And that limits you in combat potential. You have a quirk that could be so monumentally amazing in combat scenarios, yet you limit yourself. And Deku's like, well, yeah, of course I limit myself because, if I lose control of my quirk, I could die, And All Might's like, look, I'm not telling you to go absolutely crazy, but I'm telling you, you need to be more versatile. Otherwise, you're not going to make it that far. And Deku takes that to heart. And Tsukachi says, come on, we're going out to eat to celebrate your acceptance in to Shiketsu High. And All Might tells, Deku he's going to be pushing for, joint training, from the beginning of the school all throughout the major events that's going to be happening. He's even trying to get special permission to allow Shiketsu High's top 5 students, amongst their first years, to participate in the sports festival after the UA students have concluded, and the top 5 students from the sports festival will have a special reward for them with the Shiketsu students. And Deku's just like, oh, what do you mean by that? He's like, it's nothing confirmed yet, but if I can pull this off, I might be able to get it to where you guys can get in, more combat practice, because let's face it, my time as the symbol of peace is almost up. After that, crime rates are going to go through the roof. People are going to be panicking. We need to show them that there's strong unification amongst all of Japan's schools. So, starting with UA and Shiketsu, the 2 most prestigious schools to produce, top-level heroes, you and young Inasa are 2 of the strongest first years I have ever seen or come across. Not only that, but you guys are perfectly in sync with your combat. You guys are able to use your guys' quirks to enhance each other's, which is something that not even the most experienced pros can do. You guys are amazing and would make an amazing tag team, but you guys also need to learn and focus on fighting by yourselves. There's not always going to be the best scenario for you to team up with whoever you want. This school, Shiketsu, it's going to be very strict. It's going to be very hard for you, and you're going to have to learn to roll with the punches, because Shiketsu is not known for holding back whatsoever. If you mess up in Shiketsu, you're likely to get expelled. And besides, I already know who your homeroom teacher is going to be. And Deku's like, oh, who's it going to be? And All Might says, you'll find out tomorrow when you start school. And, Deku's just like, okay. All right. And All Might tells him, have you already designed your hero attire? And Deku's like, yeah, I'm pretty much figured out what I'm going to roll with. And, Sakashi's just like, oh, are you going with the design I picked out for you? And Deku's like, no, actually, Dad, I'm not big on spandex. I'm actually just going to go with a pair of black jeans, boots, and my dad's old military jacket. And, Sakashi's just like, that's it? And Deku's like, yeah, unless they allow weapons, then, I'd like to have a Jite with me. And, Sukachi's just like, Jite? And Deku's like, yeah, I used my allowance to take some classes in sword fighting, Jite use, all other types of weapons. I was trying to build a, you know, fighting style around it. However, the school makes it clear that, no weapons are allowed. So I'll have to do it barehanded. Maybe there's a workaround there eventually, but until then, I won't be able to use it. And All Might says, that'll change whenever you're a pro, kid. So don't quit practicing. And Deku's like, well, I wouldn't, but I don't have one, and they're very expensive. We don't have the money to get that. So I'll just have to wait off until I do. And, Sukachi, he's just like, I'm trying my best. And Deku's like, no, Dad, no, you do enough. It's just that I need to start being able to help. But Sukachi stops him right there. He says, no, you're doing enough by becoming a badass hero. Be a hero I can be proud of, and everything will be worth it, right? And Deku's like, right. And he's like, you become a wonderful dad, Sukachi. And, Sukachi, he's just like, thanks, All Might. And he asks Deku, if he made any extra friends. And Deku's just like, yeah, a girl. And, Sukachi, he's literally about to take a bite, and he just pauses, like, what's her name? And Deku says her name is Cammy. And, he says, full name. He says, Dad, really? And he's like, yes, really, you're giving me a full name right now. And he says, okay, Kami Utsuchimi. Sorry if I butchered that. I'm not very good with long names like that. So he says, okay. And he pulls out his phone. He looks up to see if she has any type of record. Nothing. And Deku's just like, Dad, are you thinking I would ever go for a criminal? And he's like, I don't know with you. You tend to walk kind of a shady path outside of, your rules and regulations thing. You kind of, say fuck off to authority a lot. You kind of just do your own thing, so it wouldn't put it past me. And Deku's just like, wow, so much faith. And All Might says, well, it's actually kind of good that, he does his own thing and walks his own path, because that allows him to use his own experiences in battle. And not only that, but in life. By following his own path, he's able to, draw strength from different places instead of just having one place to draw strength from. And, Deku's just like, see that? I told you. All Might even agrees with me. And they say, all right, enough of this. Let's just eat. So, they all start eating, and, next day comes. Deku, he runs to school. He doesn't feel like taking the train, so he's just running to school. And he gets there. He runs into Inasa and Cammy right off the bat. And, Cammy's like, oh, hey, there you are, Izuku. And, Deku's like, oh, hey, Inasa, what's up? And Cammy's just like, look, can you tell your friend not to flirt with me? And Deku's like looking at Inasa, and Inasa's like, what? I'm not flirting. I'm just being nice, cordial. And she's like, really? It looked an awful lot like you were flirting with me. And Inasa's like, I wouldn't. And she's like, yeah, I know. I'm just fucking with you. So Deku's just like, man, you guys are awfully, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And, she's just like, oh, I'm always chipper. And, Deku's just like, man, fuck this. And she's like, oh, hey, there's my friends. And, she introduces Deku to Seiji and to, Mora. And, they say hi. Deku's just like, cool. They all find out they're in the same class. So they're just like, well, it looks like we'll be spending the whole year together. And Deku's like, yeah, seems like it. So I hope we get along. And, Seiji's just like, yeah, same here. Mora, he's pretty much getting along with everybody. And Deku, he's a nice guy. he's just really laid back and kind of lazy to a point, kind of like how Smoker was lazy unless it came to like something that immediately interested him. But if it came to, catching villains, Deku, he's on his shit. If it comes to like following the rules, enforcing the rules, all that, he's on his shit. It's just like the downtime that he has, he's very lazy with it. He doesn't really like to be noticed all that much. So that's kind of his personality. He has like a switch mode, like outside of type of any practice or anything like that. He's chill. He's smoking his cigars. Like he's just there. But outside of that, he's just like, man, fuck all this. So they get into class, and Deku, he reads everybody's, names on the board because it says write your name on the board, introduce yourself, because the teacher's not in there yet. So Deku does that, and anyways, so he chooses the seat all the way in the back, like the empty one. There's 20 people in there, and Deku, he's just like, man, a lot of people sure to get in here. And Inasa, he's sitting in front of him, and he's like, yeah, definitely. And Kemi, she's sitting right next to, Seiji, who's sitting right beside Inasa. And then Moro's like right next to Deku. So they're just all in the same general area. And Deku, he's still smoking. And, Inasa's just like, when the teacher comes in, you're going to have to put those out. And Deku's like, I'm not putting them out unless someone says something. So the rest of the students are looking at Deku just like, dude, this dude's not just smoking one cigar. He's literally smoking two at the same time. And, Deku's just like, and mind your own business. And everybody's just like, man, this dude's a piece of shit. And Inasa's just like, no, he's just chill. You guys are the ones that are being like overly everything. And, the teacher walks in and they find out it's Yoroi, and he's just like, all right. And he looks at Deku, he's like, put those out. And Deku's like, yes, sir. He puts them out, throws them in the trash. And, Yoroi, he starts going over everything. He's like, all right, listen up. These are the rules. Rule number 1, no smoking in here. Rule number 2, keep your hats on at all times, even with hero uniforms. Those are what lets people know that you represent Shiketsu High. Rule number 3, you will obey all rules, no matter what, and you will obey every order the teachers give you. No exceptions. And he says, rule number 4, always have dignity and pride in yourselves and follow your objectives with the utmost efficiency and urgency. And he's like, if you guys cannot follow the rules, you will be immediately expelled. We will be treating you as if you are pro heroes. So if you guys mess up, we will be criticizing you, lecturing you repeatedly. That's what happens in the world of the pros. You mess up at a professional stage, you don't get the chance to redo it. You get lectured, you get griped at, possibly demoted or fired. Like, there is very little room for error, and that is what we will be teaching you here. Now then, everyone must keep their uniforms on in an orderly manner and look professional. And he's looking around and, he sees at least everyone's able to follow that order. Deku, he's got like the 4 buttons down and his jacket's unzipped and open. And, he sees that, but he's not really too concerned about that because Deku, he's paying attention. And, he's already seen what he's capable of, so he's cutting Deku a little bit of slack. But, he's like, all right, time to go over why you all want to be a hero. And he looks right at Deku and he says, Izuku Midoriya, you're starting us off. Tell us exactly why you want to be a hero. And Deku says, well, I want to be able to do things that police can't do. And Yoroi says, explain. And Deku says, the police are too limited. There's too much red tape. All that, heroes have more freedom. They have a license to use their quirk in any situation they deem necessary. They're out there with the people being able to spawn, attacks that happen. And plus, by able to do that, I'm able to accomplish my actual goals, which are to do the right thing and save people no matter what happens, what the situation is. I want to be able to save the person, help them, even if I'm not giving gratitude, thanks, none of that. I don't care about the fame or the money. I just want to be able to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And Yoroi, he's very impressed with that. He's like, now that is an old school heroic value right there. And he's like, that's actually the values that I hold myself. And Deku's like, oh, that's interesting to know. He already knew that. He's just like saying that to seem surprised. And then he goes to Inasa, and Inasa says that he wants to be a strong hero that can save anybody under any circumstances. And, Nori's like, all right, a bit simplistic, but okay. And then, Cammy, she says that she wants to be able to rescue people, when they're in desperate need of it. She wants to be more of a rescue hero. He says that's respectable. He goes to Seiji, and Seiji says that he wants to be one of the strongest heroes. And, he's like, okay, any other reason? He's like, no, I want to be one of the strongest because that means I am able to save the most people. And Roy's like, okay. And he looks at Mora, and Mora tells him, he just wants to help people out. That's pretty much it. And then he asks the rest of the class, and they say, they want money, they want fame, just all that shit. And, he's just like, so we have about 5 true heroes and 15 fakers and wannabes. And they're just like, what? He's like, listen up. Heroes don't always get the fame, fortune, none of that. There's only a few select heroes that are actually able to make it that far. And it's because their goals were not even in that. There's only one exception to that rule. And they're like, oh yeah, who's the exception? He says, Endeavor. Endeavor was power hungry from the start. He wanted to be the number one for no other reason than to prove that he was the strongest. Therefore, he's not the best, and his personality is over-obsessive, egotistical. He's one of the worst types of people to be a hero. And, they're just like, damn. There's like, oh, please, you're just jealous because Endeavor's a higher rank than you. And, you're always just like, watch it. I don't care if he's higher ranked than me. All these new school heroes, they all care about fame, fortune, popularity like it's a damn high school contest here. This is the real world. People need help. Villains are becoming craftier, more powerful. And it's up to us to stop them. If you guys don't want to stop the villains, if you guys just want fame, fortune, there's plenty other, career paths for you. I suggest you get out now. Otherwise, you're just going to be left in the dust and kicked off later. And, they're just like, fuck him. So a lot of them, they get up and you're just like, I ain't fucking with this teacher. He's got a bad attitude. And, he's just like, leave. Get your stuff and leave. You're no longer welcome at the school. And he expels like 12 people right there. And, it's just like, damn. And, over the leftovers, it's not that many. Aside from the main 5, you literally just got like 3 more fodder ones, and they're kind of thin out. And, he's like, look, if you guys don't want to be hero course, you can transfer to a support course or any other class. But this class is going to be for the elite, for those who actually want it, for those who want to be heroes and want to become strong ones at that, for the right reasons and for the right principles. And, those other 3, they just get up and go to the principal's office for a change in class. So he's like, now then, we have the 5 of you here. So, in the entrance exams, you guys fought a teacher, correct? And, they all say, yeah. Seiji and Kami and Mora never fought Yoroi whatsoever. So he says, okay, we're going to make things interesting. And they're just like, oh, how so? He's like, quirk evaluations. But this time, it's a twist from the Aizawa type. He says, you five are extremely powerful and have different and variety of quirks. And he says that each of you will have to give a demonstration of your quirk to the rest of each other and explain how exactly your quirk works. And, they're like, okay, but how's that an evaluation? He's like, you will be evaluating each other based off your quirks. And then for those of you who, think that you're above that person, there'll be a sparring match involved. And we will be ranking you based on who is the strongest and most tactical thinking of all. So they're all actually pretty excited for that. And, they say, all right. So Deku's up first for showcasing and explaining his quirk. So he says, he shows them how he just slingshots his arm of smoke and ends up slamming it into a pile of rocks over there and leaving, the rocks have a big hole in it. And he says, all right, so that's how my quirk kind of works. I'm not going to show off too much, but anyways, my quirk is I'm able to turn my body into smoke by adjusting my subatomic particles to match that of smoke's. I can do that with the air, and if there's any natural smoke around, I can control it. He says, that's kind of why I always smoke so much. As he pops in 2 cigars and starts smoking them. Since they're outside, it's not the classroom, and it's not a violation of the rules. So, he's kind of, just chilling there. Next up, Cammy. And when it comes to Cammy, she says, her quirk is, called glamour, and it allows her to emit smoke-like substance from her mouth, which can form visual and auditory illusions over a large area. However, the downside is it only lasts for a little time. And, they're just like, oh, okay, that's cool. And she creates a Deku copy, an illusion, and she's just, kind of smiling at that, and they're just like, oh boy, we can tell what type of shit she's going for. Next up is Inasa, and Inasa, he basically just creates a rising tornado type shit, and he says, that his quirk is called whirlwind. Is a focus. He says that his ability grants him freely manipulate the air around him over a wide area. He can create gusts of wind, like hurricanes, tornadoes, that type of stuff. He can use it for defense and offense. And, they're just like, dang, he's like, oh yeah, I can also, suction cup all the air around the surrounding area into one point and blast it with pinpoint precision. And everyone's just like, okay, that's a bit broken. And next up is Seiji. And Seiji, he's just like, okay, he detaches a piece of his own flesh. And he's just like, yeah, my quirk is called Meatball. It allows me to manipulate my raw flesh detach it, throw it at people. But it also allows me to control other people's flesh or disfigure their bodies into a ball of flesh, if you would. And, people are just like, that's scary. And then we go to Mora, and, he says that his quirk is, just being able to control his body hair. He can lengthen it, manipulate it, just anything that's his body's hair, that's what he can use. And, they're like, well, does your quirk have a name? And he says it's called Extendo Hair. And they're just like, okay. And he's just like, all right, now that you all know your people's quirks, who do you think would be the strongest? And, they say, it's kind of hard to tell. Cammy, she immediately says, Izuku Midori, he would be the strongest. And you're always like, what's your reasoning for that? And she says, well, he can control, his own body's substance. It makes him pretty much invulnerable to, physical attacks. You know, he can manipulate the particles in the air to turn it into smoke, suffocate people. And what else is he's like, he can control any smoke that's already there. And, Shinji's just like, true, but that doesn't make him unbeatable. It just makes him very good defensively. And Deku's like, I'm also very good offensively. And Shinji's just like, yeah, but my vote's got to go to Inasa. So he says, what's your reasoning? He says, Inasa's more practical. He controls the air. Not only that, but his smoke could just be trapped in his air form, or, his hurricane, tornadoes, or he could just create a solid ball of air to trap him in, and he couldn't do anything about it. And Inasa, he's just like, look, every time me and him have fought, it's been a tie, almost. And he says, what do you mean almost? Deku says, I've always had the edge over him. And he's just like, what? No, that's impossible. There's no possible way you should have the advantage over him. And Seiji, he's just like, that can't be possible. And Mora says, he doesn't want to have to be the one to be a tiebreaker because he can't decide who's stronger. But he knows it's either between Deku or Inasa. So Yoroi says, okay then, we're going to have a 1v1. Izuku versus Inasa. Only this time, no time limit, and the only way to win is to knock out your opponent or to have your opponent surrender. No other way. You have full permissions of your quirks, so go ahead, change into your hero attire, and let's get ready to have the match. And so they're just like, alright. So Deku changes into his hero attire, Inasa into his, and they get ready to throw down. And they're like, so what are we gonna do about 30 through 5? And Seiji says, well, I'm obviously the third strongest, and Moro would be the fourth. And Kami's like, you're just putting me at the bottom because of my quirk? And he's like, yes, your quirk isn't that strong, and you don't look that physically strong either. And Kami's just like, well, that might be true, but who's to say that I wouldn't beat you? And Seiji says, like, you really want to fight me? And Kami's just like, yeah, let's fight. So those two will have a fight after Deku and Inasa. So Yoroi, he starts the fight, and they start off. Deku rushes straight at Inasa, and Inasa, he creates a rising tornado right in front of Deku, and Deku, he does get sucked into it, but he uses it to his advantage. Keep in mind, they've been fighting for a long time. So Deku's gotten very used to how Inasa fights, but Deku's also like a master tactician at this because he's always been very smart and thoughtful and, mindful of his environment. And he is taking All Might's words into heart from last night. So he uses his smoke and he propels his body in the momentum force of the tornado. So it's not hurting him, he's using it as an amp to send him high up into the air, and then he uses his smoke as a counterbalance to push him towards Inasa at a faster rate. And Inasa barely has time to dodge before Deku hits the ground and leaves a crater in it. And then he sends out a smoke fist straight to Inasa's stomach, using the momentum from his landing before it dissipates, which means the punch hits him in the stomach hard. Inasa nearly throws up. However, Inasa determines that, alright, so he holds his hand up and he's just creating this hurricane-like wind formation. And Deku's just like, oh, you want to play hardball then? Alright. So he gets ready and he charges up his power. He's creating a lot of smoke behind him and he's about to push directly forward. If you guys know how Smoker and Ace fought in Alabasta, that's basically what Deku is doing here. Like sending a giant smoke wall towards Inasa to kind of, you know, hide his presence almost a bit because Deku's about to pull off some crazy fucking shit here. So Deku, he throws it at Inasa. Inasa charges and throws this fucking hurricane wind straight at Deku. The smoke starts going into the air, meaning it's a smoke storm right now. Inasa can't see shit. And Deku's using his body around. He grabs Inasa's arm with one of his detached arms in a smoke form. And then out of nowhere, he kicks Inasa to the ground, grabbing, his other arm and slamming his knee into the back of Inasa's neck, pinning him. And the smoke clears out, and it's able to see Deku wins by way of submission against Inasa. And Inasa's actually really surprised that Deku used his powers like that so much, because that's the first time Deku's ever done anything like that. So he's actually really surprised. He's like, well, I can't complain. He adapted and overcame. And that's the first time he's ever fought like that. So, Deku, he's just like, had to evolve. Otherwise, I'd become stagnant and not go very far. I'd be limiting my own combat potential. And Yoi is very impressed with Deku's seemingly, self-evaluation. Little does he know, it was actually All Might that told him that. And Deku's not about to be saying that because, unless directly asked, he's not really one to talk much. So that happens, and Deku, he's like, so I guess I'd take the number 1 spot. And, he's like, yep, Inasa, you're number 2. Next up is a spot for 3rd and 5th place. Since they pretty much agreed, Mora is like the 4th strongest, respectively. So, unless Seiji loses, he's not going to be, one to contemplate, 4th place placement. So, they get ready to throw down, and, Cammy, she's like, alright, Izuku won his, I have to win mine. And she creates multiple versions of herself and starts running around in circles around Seiji. And Seiji, he just throws his flesh at like a lump of them. And he's just hurling that shit out, trying to catch her. And he's also charging in and trying to touch them. But since they're illusions, don't really do much. So she creates an auditory illusion, seeming that she's behind him. He turns around to touch her, and Cammy straight up just high kicks him straight in the face, knocking him down and putting her heel on his head. She's like, he's not the only one that can improve rapidly. And Seiji, he's like, the fuck? So it's clear because, another hit and she'd knock him out. He surrenders. So, he's pretty much done, and he's now saying, I am not the 5th weakest here. And, Yuri says, well, tough luck. You showed, not a whole lot of great things here. So, you're ranked at 5th. And he's like, shit. Anyways, that's enough for class today. Class dismissed. I'll come up with regiments for each and every one of you starting tomorrow. And at the end of the week, we're going to UA. And there's like, going to UA? Inasa and Deku, they know what's up because All Might's told them. However, Cammy, Seiji, and Mora, they don't know shit. Like, they're just like, the fuck is going on here? So that's going on, and, Deku, he heads home with Inasa, and Inasa's, asking him, so did you actually come up with your own weaknesses by yourself, or did someone else tell you about them? And Deku says, All Might told me about my own weaknesses when he saw me. And, Inasa's like, knew it wasn't you. You're too lazy to come up with, a way to evaluate yourself in your own free time. And Deku's like, yeah, that's pretty much true. And Inasa's just like, well, I'm not too bummed about it. After all, you did do great against me in that fight. And, Deku's just like, well, thanks, man. You did amazing too. Honestly, pushed me further than I would have ever pushed myself. And, Inasa's like, yeah, that's why we're friends. And Deku's like, no, that's why we're family. So they eventually go their own separate ways. And, next day comes, and Yoroi, he's telling them, all right, listen, you're going to have to really push yourselves here. There's no more time for you to be sitting idly by because I want you guys to show UA High School what Shiketsu High is all about. I want you to prove that we are stronger than them, even though we have a lot fewer numbers. That we are the elite and we are the strongest of the strong. And, he's like, I thought this was joint training. We're not going to be fighting them, are we? And he's like, no, you guys will be competing against them in rescue teams. However, to my knowledge, it seems like you guys will not be teamed up with each other, but with members from UA. And, they're just like, oh, great. So, yeah, they're not too happy about that in the slightest. But, hey, what can you do? So, they start training. Cammy, she's training in martial arts and training in ways to use her illusions more effectively. Inasa, he's training his physical body as well as his quirk to be used in tandem with each other. Kind of like how Deku uses his, that's how Inasa wants to get with his. But, of course, we both know that's never going to happen. So Inasa's working about, how to create a sonic wind punch. Which means, like, when he punches someone, it hurts with the physical strength. But after the first impact, he uses his wind quirk to blast them with a megaton of wind as well, creating double the impact on a delayed version. So Seiji, he's working on ways of, hand-to-hand combat with his quirk that can also be used from long distance and up close. Mora is more or less, learning how to manipulate his hair in a way that's discreet and stealthy. Deku, on the other hand, he's learning how to involve his body more so into his quirk and how to use better movements with it and more effective hits. Since most of his, training was spent with the Jite, he's working on his hand-to-hand takedowns because that's what's lacking. His, overall fighting is good, but his takedowns is what actually needs the help here. So, that's, of course, what's going on with Deku. So, they're training in that for, the week all the way up into the USJ. USJ happens, and, Deku, he's on the bus. They're chilling there, Inasa and Cammy are beside him. Seiji, he's asking Deku, why does he wear that, Navy jacket if he's not going to ever be going into the Navy? And Deku says, that was his biological father's jacket before he was killed in the Navy. And Seiji's just like, oh. And Morris looks at him and he's like, you idiot. So Seiji, he apologized. Deku's like, oh no, I never knew him that well anyway. But I did respect what he did for his own justice. He was really all about it. He tried to put it on to me, but I was too young to understand it, Man, honestly, I don't even remember exactly what it was. But, I knew he hated me. But even then, just because your dad's a piece of shit doesn't mean what he stood for is. So, I don't wear the jacket in remembrance of him. I wear the jacket as, a symbol of justice. And they're like, okay, we can get behind that. And then Cammy asked the obvious question. She's like, so why is it that you never wear a shirt with that? And Deku's just like, it's too restricting. I don't like it. I like my clothes baggy and loose. And, they're just like, but why? And Deku's just like, I don't know. It's just my own personal preference. I don't like it. And they're just like, all right. So Inasa, he's pretty quiet because he's trying to think of his own shit. And Deku's telling him, look, man, you don't need to be so quiet. It's honestly kind of off putting how quiet you are right now. And Inasa's just like, sorry, man, I'm just thinking if my moves are enough. And we're going to UA. You know who goes to UA. And Deku's like, yeah, I'm not too overly happy to see him, but what can you do? And Seiji's like, who goes to UA that you guys know? And Deku says, oh, some asshole that I went to elementary school and middle school with. Inasa went to middle school with him as well. But this dude, he's like pure ego maniac, just thinks he's the best just because of his quirk. Not even what he can do with it. He just says, oh, I have an explosion quirk. I'm the best. Blah, blah, blah. He's honestly an asshole, just overall. Not even any type of heroic in any way, shape, or form. And, Seiji's just like, well, they do say the smallest dog barks the loudest. And Deku, he just starts laughing. He's just like, I can actually imagine him being a dog. And Inasa asks Deku, because he's laughing too. He's like, what type of dog do you think he would be? And Deku says, he's obviously a Chihuahua. There is no way around that. And, Inasa's just like, Bakugo the Chihuahua. I can see it. And he starts laughing his ass off. And you're right, he's actually just letting them have their fun for right now because he wants them to be as stress free as possible. They get there, and Aizawa and Class 1A, they're already waiting. And Bakugo, he's pissed off. He's already shouting. And Deku and Inasa immediately hear that, and they're just like, oh. And Deku's just like, well, the Chihuahua's barking. And, that kind of puts a smile back on Inasa's face. So they get out, and, Cammy's the first one out. And, Minetta's just like, if they're all like that, I have to transfer schools. And then he sees Seiji, and, he's just like, oh, there's a purple haired Rick. And then they see Mora, and Bakugo just says, who let that hairy, woolly, fucking Wookiee looking motherfucker on here? And Deku pops out, and he's just like, and who let the Chihuahua off his leash? And Bakugo's just like, the fuck you say? And he's looking, he's just like, Deku. And Deku, he tells him, how many times do I have to tell you? Don't call me that. I'm not useless, unlike you. And Inasa, he's the last one off, and he's just like, Bakugo, you need to, learn some manners here. Our classmate isn't some Wookiee looking dude. That's his quirk. He can't help it. Unlike you, someone who's just a complete asshole to be an asshole. And, Deku's like, you know what? Looking at your outfit, you actually look more like a Saturday morning cartoon villain than any type of respectable hero. I mean, what's that thing going on in your hair? Is that supposed to be like your, oh, I'm scary type of thing? I mean, seriously, what's the point of it? It serves no purpose. If anything, that's just going to get you thrown around. And those big ass gauntlets, I'm sure you think they serve some great and magical purpose, but let me tell you, if those things are that big and we're going to be going up against each other, oh, I'm throwing you straight by them. Not even going to care. I might as well just, sign my W right here and now, because the way your outfit looks, man, nah. And he's just laughing his ass off. And then he sees Todoroki, and he quits laughing. And Deku, he's like, yo, bro, what's up? And, he's just like, oh, that's the dude who thinks he's too good for everybody. And he points right at Todoroki. And Deku's just like, you mean half and half Zuko looking motherfucker? And, he's just like, oh, yeah, him. Deku's just like, man, Do you dye your hair half white? Are you like there? Is that natural? Because let me tell you, that does not look natural in the slightest. And, Todoroki's actually getting kind of pissed and he says, "Why don't you shut your mouth?" And Deku's just like, "Look, I would absolutely love to be quiet, but you see, you, you right there have personally come up and acted like a raging douchebag to my brother here. So I'm liable to say some shit, and if you can't take it, then maybe you shouldn't be here." And All Might's walking up and he's just like, "Okay, everybody, calm down, in line, try to get along. This is to bolster relationships between the schools and students." And, Deku's just like, "Sorry, just poking a little bit of fun here." And All Might's just like, "Yes, I know, but still, try to get along, please." And Deku's like, "Okay." So, they're just pretty much at each other's throats right now. Deku really hates Bakugo for all the shit he did to him through elementary school up. Like, Deku and Bakugo are on the worst of terms here. And Inasa, he's pretty much got a hatred for Todoroki because even though they don't know Todoroki's, points of view, you know, they're just like, if he didn't go through everything, Deku kind of went through, and Deku's a nice guy, there should be no reason why he shouldn't be a decent, nice guy too. And, Deku can kind of sense Todoroki went through some shit, but he's, thinking, I went through some shit too, And, he's just like, well, whatever. I'm going to show them in here that I'm the best. And that's where I'm going to be leaving it off for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, I would appreciate if you guys liked the video, subscribe if you're new, comment down below, and I'll catch you guys later.